In this video, I explore age regression from a couple of different angles. I would note as preface that this is drawn from corollary experiences with other abuse survivors and the intimate working of and with the age regression in myself and my wife over the last 3 years. So there's a couple of pieces of this that I want to talk about. The first one is that the ages of an individual are like the ages in a tree. And so you have at the core the 6-month seedling of a tree, the 1 year, the 2 year, etc. And the rings in a tree, which allow one, when a tree is cut, to count the age of the tree, correspond with the seasons. There are seasons of growth and then pause, seasons of growth and then pause. And if the core of the tree doesn't exist, if you go back in time and destroy the 1-year-old baby, the adult does not exist. The adult, the 50-year-old is predicated on the 30-year-old, the 30-year-old is predicated on the 20-year-old, etc. And so in order to continue to grow, every age must be traversed. Now, the ages exist physically, expression of the physical body, emotionally, and mentally. Now, it's unusual and in most cases impossible to stop physical aging in a human being. But one can, particularly in a culture such as our own, retard inner growth, traumatize, dissociate inner growth as the body continues to grow, and thus stay frozen in a younger age. It's also worth noting that the template for navigating the psychological terrain of a given age, from 0 to 20, let's say, or 0 to 15, as long as the parents are the primary influence. The primary influence is determined not by blood, but by one's control over Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow has effectively shown that every single human being needs to survive. That is a need. It's not a preference, or you are not a human being if you are dead. Needs security around that survival in order to develop. Needs love and belonging before they can reach to the next point of self-esteem. Now, the primary caregiver of a child, and that's added to when the legal responsibility for a child is 0 to 18, the primary caregiver determines whether an individual survives. If you're 2 years old and your mother hates you and loathes you and abandons you and makes you a third or fourth priority, you are in constant terror. You do not have the security of your basic survival. If the house stays stable and she makes it clear that you can live there, but she hates you and she will always hate you because blah, 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 you do not have your love and belonging. Now, they are connected. If someone does not love and make you feel welcome, the odds of you surviving go down significantly, which is what makes it a trauma. Exclusion from a group, exclusion from community is a shame, and it triggers trauma, a biological regression back to the reptilian age of fight, flight, freeze. So when human beings do not behave as human beings and participate in creating a sociopathic environment for a child, the child has the ability biologically to go back 200 million years to the reptilian age, to the dinosaur crocodile age, in which fight, flight, freeze in a sociopathic environment. Crocodiles. No empathy, no mirror neurons, no love, no capacity to love. A crocodile will fight, run, or freeze based primarily on an instinct of survival. No security in survival for a crocodile, although the bigger a crocodile is in that dominance mentality. We're talking about a 200 million year old program that says that the top alpha aggressor ends up surviving a bit longer. And surprisingly, 200 million years later in the human age, when we're actually exploring feelings, developing the possibility, if not the capacity to love, then when you're in this sociopathic dynamic, we have the reptilian brainstem, we have that deep programming that will cause the body, independent of the free will of the heart and mind of a human being, to go back, fight, flight, freeze. So this is deep regression. Millions and millions of years. A crocodile is estimated to have come into existence about 200 million years was the number I read. But it's definitely a species-back regression. Now, amazingly, we don't just have a crocodile brain. We don't just have a reptilian brainstem. We have imagination. We have mirror neurons. So we have all these wonderful possibilities. But as a safeguard in survival, what nature says is that you will be born depending on these caregivers. Now, a human being, more than a crocodile, has the ability to sociopathically use their children, to manipulate them, to calculate how to get more out of them. And this usury takes many forms. One of the biggest is a transference of shame, where a parent that feels insecure, unlovable, unhappy, frightened of being punished, transfers these emotions to their child in a systematic pattern and contract of survival. And the contract is very simple. It says basically that I feel all these things and I don't want to. You depend on me for your survival, security, love, and belonging. So here's the deal, little 2-year-old, as if you have much choice. You are going to take my emotions off of me, and I will let you live. You don't like it? You will have a 30-foot giant, proportionally speaking, when you're dealing with an infant. You will have a 30-foot giant, enraged, hating you, threatening to end your life. That's what it feels like to be 2, 3, 4 years old and have an adult completely lose it, to have someone go insane because you've told them the truth and they're not ready to deal with that truth. The truth brings up uncomfortable feelings in an emotionally illiterate culture such as our own. And so there's this contract. And so a child is growing. And a healthy child seeks to grow out in a circular direction. Their feminine side, their emotions, their masculine side, their thoughts, their actions. A child develops in a circular direction, but starts to encounter taboos, impedances, judgments, trigger points in the sociopathic environment that's around them. And what they learn is that there are a whole variety of rules, that mom behaves this way when you're in public, and so these things are okay in public and not in public, and then she behaves this way in private, and then these things are okay and these things are not okay in private. And mother doesn't bridge these two together because she would have to acknowledge some of the taboo things in our culture. She'd have to acknowledge, for example, that she is afraid of other people, because you don't behave differently in these bizarre ways unless you are afraid. She would have to acknowledge the reality that there is an enormous level of fear in this culture. I'm afraid of being seen doing this, so we only do this behind closed doors. I'm afraid of being caught lying, because lying isn't good. But if it's behind doors and I can say, don't talk back to your mother, then it's apparently fine. So, and as a child naturally tries to reconcile these discrepancies, these asymmetrical patterns that are further buried in what can be a particularly dangerous message, that this is somehow all because we love you. We hate you because we love you. We're hypocritical because we love you. We do weird things because we love you. And you want to know why people start in our culture to get upset when you say, I love you. You have only to look at the 30 to 40,000 impressions of insane, crazy-making behavior in the caregiver coming towards that child before you realize that you have just unleashed a biological connection in that person with their most toxic, frightening, and traumatic events in their entire life. Meaning their body has heard that word love, and it's been associated with dissociative whipping, with dissociative beating, it's been associated with lies, it's been associated with cheating, and their body says this word is not safe because it's been polluted. It means nothing to do with what the dictionary definition is. It is the correlation in the body, how the memory of a given word is laced over and over and over again in the body. This is what the word means to the body, to your feelings. Now, your thoughts may be off in some weird channel where you actually think about the dictionary definition, but if 80% of the time a word has been used, it's been associated with the opposite of its dictionary meaning. Do you think your body looks to the dictionary, or your body looks to past experiences? Your body looks to whatever it needs to look at to keep safe. And since people have used this word love before hurting you, when you say the word love, the body prepares to be hurt. So you get this very bizarre thing where someone says, don't say that. Don't ruin the relationship. Meaning, don't terrify me with the memories of how that word has been used before. So we have this context. Now, the child naturally, as I say, looks out in all directions, looks at positive emotions and negative emotions, looks at their feelings and their thoughts, looks at their bodies and their feelings, looks up and looks down. But a series of frightening events take place at different ages for almost all of us. And so we're growing along, and we looked over here and we were encouraged, you see. This is a very important thing to understand, that, for example, emotional intensity happens in all directions. So if you're growing in emotional intensity, it means you feel your hate more intensely, it means you feel your kindness more intensely, it means you feel your excitement more intensely, it means your volume is up. When you turn the volume of the stereo up, and when you explore the range, like how loud can the stereo go up and down, it's not just the songs that the culture wants to hear that turn up. It is any sound. It is a neutral mechanism. The self in the psyche in many ways is designed circularly. The circle is the most elegant shape around. So when we're doing intensity testing, when we're expressing this emotion or this emotion, when we're going around the circle of emotion, I like you, you just gave me some ice cream. Or I said I love you because when I say I love you, I notice you give me more ice cream. That's another correlation a child starts to pick up. Obviously they want the ice cream, and if they just say, can I have some ice cream, and they're told no, and they say, I want some ice cream, and they're told, shut up or I'll hit you. And then they say, Mom, I love you. Oh, you can have some ice cream. This is not love. This is, I finally searched around, and it seems like what you mean by can I have some ice cream is I love you. So when I want ice cream, I say I love you. And that's apparently what I have to do. I had a girlfriend once where I had to apologize every time I wanted her to be warm to me. And the strange thing was she would usually do something that was bizarre. And if I said this is bizarre and why are you doing this, then that was the end of that conversation. But if I said, I'm sorry, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure I've done something, then suddenly, there was the ice cream. So it's what a child starts encountering as they open up is, and it's very confusing for a child because, they show curiosity in mathematics and they're suddenly a genius. My son's going to go to Harvard, They show curiosity to their sister's breasts or to something else, and now suddenly, you're the most horrible person around. And it's like, curiosity doesn't work that way. Curiosity is circular. The culture is incredibly elongated, incredibly asymmetrical in its taboos, in its bizarre, even science is not universally applied. Just look at the banned TED Talk by Rupert Sheldrake, and suddenly you see that it is scientists who are most upset about applying scientific principles skeptically to weaknesses in their own paradigm. You see, it's a little bit shaky. We don't want to be scientific about looking here. The speed of light is an interesting asymmetry because it doesn't seem to be as stable as it's supposed to be when we actually use the scientific method. Okay, so we'll just won't use the scientific method, you see. But we don't want to be caught being scientists not using the scientific method, so let's ban Rupert Sheldrake's TED Talk. Let's keep stuff away from there. So let's punish the scientist here, but reward them over here. Now, these things are for political reasons. Now, a child is not born political. They learn politics from the irrational behavior of the people around them. They learn the asymmetrical ranking structure that is completely bizarre, but for some reason, because of the biases in the adults around them that have been built in, and they're often way outdated. You have the education system today based on the 1800 factory needs for certain workers or secretaries or something like this. It's not up to date. So it's not only asymmetrical and heavily biased, it is, it's out of date. And at some point, the out-of-dateness puts it in direct opposition with the most valuable thing. And so at some point, what is called education, if it doesn't change, becomes stupidity, because it takes up vast amounts of time and energy to teach you things you don't need to know while taking up all your time so that you cannot learn what you do need to know because you're going to school. And that's what's blocking you from learning healthy things. That's why I left school, I just did the calculations. and I was learning 20% of useful topics at 50% efficiency, which meant that my education, 8 hours a day, homework, $5,000 a year Waldorf school, my education was 10% of its optimal efficiency. Now I made a bet that I could get it up to 30% optimal efficiency. Big deal, right? Go from 10% to 30% and get paid to go from 10% efficiency to 30% efficiency, which I did in complete opposition to every single person around me. And the only thing that gave me confidence was that they would not think. Now, when you go to your math teacher and say, why are you worried that I'm going to leave school? And he said, well, you've got to learn maths. I said, well, I've learned, long division, short division, adding, subtraction. Can you give me a single example in your life of when you've ever used, trigonometry or algebra or whatever? And he said, yes, I can. I can. I said, okay, what? He said, teaching you. I said, okay, so aside from wasting my time to learn something that has no benefit in your life, when has it been useful? And he couldn't come up with an answer. And this was, someone who actually would engage in the dialogue. And most adults, when I'd check with them, they just say, you just can't do this. And it would become obvious that they could not think. And it's like, well, you went through this school system. You went through this school system, and you cannot give an intelligent reason for it existing. And you think I want to end up like you, not able to engage with an idea on its own merits? I mean, give me a break. Now, I mention this because this is in the terrain as a 14-year-old, as a 12-year-old, that had adults literally raging at me. So as a sensitive, someone in Elaine Aron's work who is part of the 10 to 20% of the population that is neurologically more sensitive than the other 90%. And this is part of nature's biodiversity. It's not better than, it's not worse than. A sensitive is better at doing certain things. A non-sensitive is better at doing certain things. A non-sensitive is much more happy in this world because this world is built for non-sensitives. There's not even the acknowledgement of the diversity in the biology and the need and responsibility for the majority to create environments in any given workplace, etc., that cater to the 10 to 20% in any company, in any group, in any demographic that are highly sensitive. Now, this is ignorance. This is cruelty based on ignorance. It's an area where an enormous amount of sensitive people on the planet are suffering, and nobody's doing anything about it, and they're being blamed for their suffering. This is the level of stupidity we're dealing, but it's obviously convenient for the 80% on the surface. I say on the surface because while most sensitives have suffered throughout history to an alarming degree, the 2% of sensitives that have managed to choreograph an environment, to curate an environment that is suitable, that brings out the best in them as a sensitive person, they are the Edisons, they are the Napoleons, they are the people who change this world. It is the tiny percentage of sensitives that have an unusual gift in something that changed this world, that benefit the 80%, who turn right around and make an exception for this eccentric. They just turn sensitive into eccentric and continue to punish all the rest, rather than understanding that perhaps if we curated more environments for sensitives, we would have a evolving world at 200 to 300% of the pace that we are evolving, and it would be going in more intelligent directions than the world we have today. But these types of explorations and thoughts I learned early on. I remember my Waldorf teacher in England getting triggered by my line of questioning in class. So this is, of course, the insanity. If I had gotten the message that teachers don't actually want deep questions, and that they just say any questions so that they can feel good about themselves, then I would not have kept raising my hand and asking meaningful questions. But I hadn't gotten the memo that teachers didn't want to be asked meaningful questions, particularly questions that brought them to the limits of their training and expertise. And so I would ask them. And after being raged at as a 10, 12-year-old sensitive, I turned into the class fool because it just seemed more convenient. And in this role, I was completely welcome. So an intelligent, inquisitive, incisive thinker, raged at and traumatized, a clown, patronized and ignored, basically, which was better as a sensitive than realizing that for some strange reason my teacher is scared of me. For some strange reason my teacher is raging at me. And I don't want that. And so since the only thing that I'm doing that is evoking that is doing what they ask and asking questions that are actually thoughtful, I'm just going to stop doing that. Now, of course, the teacher is delighted because I didn't point this out to him. He would have been furious if I had at that point said, well, wait a minute, you're raging at me. Are you suitable to be a teacher? Are you capable of doing this? And if so, then why are you singling me out for your rage when nobody else is asking you the thoughtful questions that you say you want? Could you answer that? And I will not rage at you because I actually want to know. This is taboo behavior in our cult. And it's a cult because it's not rational. There's nothing intelligent about a teacher raging at intelligent students. There's nothing intelligent about it. It just happens. Why? Because it's cult-like. It's because that's the way it is. Don't rock the boat. And you can tell it's cult-like when everyone tells the intelligent student how to manage the stupidity of the teacher rather than telling the principal how to get better teachers or how to bring the teacher in. Now, when up to speed. Now, when this type of thing is happening, unspoken laws are being laid out carefully in the psyche of the children, the individuals that are going along this. And so that was actually a very seminal moment in regression for me, because when you are raged at and hated, that teacher hated me. Now I can say, of course, in high school, nobody taught me a single thing about emotions because that would have been too intelligent. Now, I can now say that hatred doesn't exist without helplessness and fear. You take away either fear or helplessness, and hate disappears. You must have helplessness and fear for hate to exist. So, presumably, the teacher was feeling afraid of losing control. That just means he's got traumatic history, which, as a former drug addict and the person with different issues, he did, obviously. And his name was Peter Cook. And he was my Michael Hall teacher. Now, the other thing is the helplessness. So presumably he didn't have the training to know what to do with this situation. He had the training that he's supposed to ask questions, but he didn't have the training on how to respond when there were really thoughtful questions. Now, I just got tired of this. Basically, I'm left in the lurch having to play the fool, or I'm being punished for the teacher's ignorance and fear. And so it made sense to me to leave school. Of course, nobody likes to set off into a completely new environment that nobody around them is doing. So I asked. I didn't want to make a mistake. so I asked every single adult around me, and as I said, the only thing that gave me confidence was that they were not thinking about the issue as thoroughly as I was. And this was evident to me. Obviously, they had more life experience. If you talk with 10 adults and you're 14 years old deciding to leave school for good, those 14 adults have hundreds of years of life experience that I don't have. But not one of them had a thoughtfulness that I was demonstrating. And that is telling. This is even more telling when you're told that these are really smart people, that you're lucky to be in such a civilized society, that you're lucky to be in Waldorf school, and blah, 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 blah. This is very telling if this is the level of thinking. Now, talking like this has gotten me traumatized every single time that I've tried in my life to talk like this. Now, I don't like upsetting people. I don't like pretending to be dumb so that other people feel comfortable. That is dumb. I don't like that situation, but I've encountered it enough that my body cringes as I go into this terrain. My body cringes because it has been asked to go into shock over and over again to intimidate me into backing down, to make people who are afraid feel more comfortable. Now, this has happened at different waves in my life. I think the first wave started in the 3 and 4 when I began to ask certain very open-ended and innocent questions. My parents began to get afraid of me. And they were already emotionally disconnected. And so as they became afraid of me, the question was, I'm getting no love as it is. Meaning I'm not getting deep attuned bonding. I'm not getting sensitivity. They're not telling me the truth, etc. But I don't want to feel like I'm this scary person. So who do I have to be to not scare them? And it turned out a pretty unhealthy person didn't scare them at all. But this direct perception terrified them. So this is a very vulnerable terrain when it is ubiquitous, when it's all around, when there's not like one person who really wants to sit down for 3 hours and hear and see, and then there's all these other people, and then that the one person can explain why they want to hear, and when they say they want to hear, they actually do and aren't going to shout and hurt you, whereas all these other people say, I want to hear, but when you speak, they complain, joke, they do any number of strategies that basically say, you are the last thing that we want to deal with here. See, this is this has been a crisis point of persona, because I went from one fork in the road that was heading towards sincere intelligence with dignity to clown fool, because the path of sincere intelligence with dignity would show up the teacher's lack of training and the murderous rage that kept coming into his eyes, the contorted expressions in his faces, was not something I wanted to induce. But since that's what was induced by my questions, the fork towards the fool, which is a role that I've played in a number of different places, because this part is not welcome. Now, this is a very strange thing, because this part could have helped my parents. This part could have helped my school. This part could have helped my teacher. This part could have helped me. This part could have helped my classmates. And it's the enemy. This part could have helped high, and it is the enemy. So I play this dance where, having been traumatized since infancy for expressing certain parts, where I have to find a role that is not threatening, that will not get me attacked like this. And when this is going on in an insanity is when the teacher continues asking for questions while absolutely hating anyone asking them. That's insanity. And it's not acknowledged. You know, he doesn't say, I hate you so much, you're da-da-da-da-da. He just makes up something that tells you that, it certainly doesn't lead you towards knowing what's going on, because it often doesn't occur to young people that an adult would be scared of a child. It never occurred to me until now. So then it's frightening to not know what is it that is so upsetting. And I've had this with women going into vulnerable terrain as well. Okay, so you said this, but now you're doing this. What's that about? Now, I'm thinking if we both figure out what it's about, we'll be able to take better care of you. And they go white or run off or say that's too personal. Too personal for what? To be intelligent? You want to be run by unconscious programs for the rest of your life? And so so what we have here is a split between a high level of perception that is continually traumatized and the regressed 4-year-old that's starting to get the first whacks. The first whacks, meaning slaps, kickbacks, deflections, jokes at their expense, humiliation, etc. The first pushback from the environment that is saying, I don't want you to see me, I don't want you to talk like this, I don't want to be asked this, I don't want any of this, I don't want it. Now, the problem is that this dumbs down the whole system. Because when all I come away with at 4 years old is if I look through this lens in this direction, I'm going to be killed. Adaptive personas come in to say, we have got to keep this conscious mind from looking in that direction through this lens. And to keep this guy alive. And so they join in with the abusers. You're dumb, don't look there, that's what weird people do. And so they internalize the messages to make sure that I'm not seeing clearly because it's too dangerous. The problem with this is it affects an entire lifetime. When you cannot see clearly and your body starts telling you you're dying if you get near to looking. For example, today, I've been dealing with a backache. I've been dealing with regression to 4 years old. I've been dealing with all this stuff because I'm turning my attention into taboo arenas. Now, turning my attention directly into taboo arenas causes people in this country to go insane. More accurately, I think it causes people in this country to try every manipulative technique to discourage that, including violence, including threats, including intimidation. I'm thinking of Dan Argraves, because when it really hurt me when he asked me to cheat on his partner at the time, Carrie. And he asked me to have a sexual experience with him but not tell Carrie. Now, I've never lied to a partner. I've never lied to a friend. I know from that information, statistically correlated, that Dan Argraves cheats on people. If you're 50, 60 years old, this is not a one-off event. I'm not particularly hot. I'm not particularly his type. He just likes having sex with lots of people. Now, I also know that he cannot be loved. This is the technicality of the code. You have to be seen. If someone says, I love you, and it is based on the fact that they think you're like this when you're like this, you have no idea if they could say they love you if they actually saw the real pattern. So I feel sad for Dan. I wouldn't settle for that. I do the exact opposite with dates. I remember a Cafe Gratitude date with this woman that was clearly wanting to make out with me and this, and that, and the other. And I can't imagine that this woman actually accepts many parts of who I am. And I don't want a makeout. I want to say, someone who can actually see and accept who I am. And I don't think she will. I don't think she likes my intensity. I don't think she likes some of the controversial areas where I step into here and step into here. I don't think she likes that. So I'm not playing along. I'm not saying, yeah, me too. I say, it seems like you're interested in me, but I don't think you're interested in me. This is a first date, And she said, oh, I am. And I said, well, let's go through a few things. And I picked the 3 things that, based on her temperament, I know about me, that I think she's most likely to be upset about. I'm hyper-controlling in some situations. Did you think that? Oh, all the men I pick are so controlling. Yeah, me too. You're picking me and I'm hyper-controlling. So let's get that illusion that you're making huge progress and just the controlling men are going to vanish because you've done an affirmation. Let's just dispel that. And she's not upset. What seems to upset her the most is that I'm being candid about this. It's ruining the illusionary 6-month honeymoon period. I have no interest in a 6-month honeymoon period. You are going to, if you spend time with someone, discover who they are, period. And what a crappy thing to do for yourself, to pretend to be one way and slowly have the mask come off for 6 months, and then have the person who said you were so wonderful because they thought you were someone else now say you're horrible because they're actually seeing who you are. I want someone to say, wow, why did you become so controlling? Well, every time I seem to let go of control, I get traumatized and hurt. I hate being controlling. I hate the effort it takes, the calculation it takes. I hate it. But I am not surrounded, statistically speaking, by sensitive, intelligent people that ask the questions that would help me surrender and have my well-being go up as opposed to plummet. In other words, I've never met the woman that says, tell me your allergies, tell me your sensitivities, tell me what makes you nervous and panicky, tell me anything that people do that would really traumatize you so that I cannot do that. And then you can just relax and I will be spontaneous and I won't traumatize you. See, I've never met the woman who did that. I've dated psychotherapists, 30 high women, teachers, authors of relationship book. I haven't met that woman who has that degree of sensitivity and care for her own feminine self and mine to ask and share those questions. So being out of control with people flying blind means getting rammed into. I don't like that, so I take the extra energy and care to assert more control. And it drives most people crazy. And some of it is not healthy because it's overcompensating for the helplessness of a 2-year-old who had no control and is in shock in a culture that is trauma illiterate. You get that? Well, the woman that says, wow, I'm really lucky, you know that. And it would have taken me 3 years to discover that with a typical boyfriend. I'm in luck here. Let's get going. That's the woman I want. She's hard to find. Typical woman, I thought I was making progress with my affirmations. It's like, no, it's actually going to take a little intelligence to bring this about. It's going to take pattern analysis or very good luck. I mean, by all means, go out and date 500 people and see what you stumble into. But most of these women are not doing that either, you see. They're waiting around for Prince Charming to come to them. And so this is not adding up. This is very unpopular, by the way. So what's happening, and the reason I'm interested in this is I'm worried for these women. I meet 60-year-old women, 70-year-old women waiting for their soulmate, doing the thing that didn't bring their soulmate for the last 40 years. And I'm worried for them. And I don't think it's kind to pretend that they have a great positive attitude and someone would be lucky to have them when it's clearly not working. I don't feel good about it. Now, it might work in a healthy culture, but this is not a healthy culture. This is a profoundly unhealthy culture in so many ways. And being positive in the sense of ignoring the obvious deficits is setting oneself up for failure. I do not like to see people I care about fail. I tried to bring this to one high intern, and she kept saying I was ruining her positive vibe and was too negative. To me, it is profoundly cynical to watch someone bet against the house when the house has 80% odds of winning. I don't want to be positive for that gambler. I want to tell them to get out of that house and create a house where they've got 85% chance or 90% chance of winning. And then I want to be positive. So this is called constructive pessimism, by the way, and it outperforms constructive optimism and destructive optimism. Constructive pessimists, of which Bill Gates is in that category, outperforms. Constructive pessimists outperform constructive optimists, people that are optimistic and do more because they're optimistic. That's good optimism. And people who are optimistic and do nothing because they're counting on the universe to do all their work for them. This doesn't work. So if we go into these age areas of regression, what's happening is that my curiosity or my truth or my feelings are growing up to a certain age in a circular direction, and then they're hitting a cultural taboo. And I'm being shocked and traumatized out of my body at that point. And the entire circle is regressed, meaning I go back to maybe 6 months earlier than that where I wasn't attacked. Because the new curiosity, the new vulnerability of a new domain it's like a tendril. The very tip of a vine in a new leaf. And it's so innocent and it's so open. And when you're growing in that way, and it's very, very, very slow and present, and then chop, it's off. it's too fast. It's too erratic. It's too bizarre. It's not attuned. There's no warning saying you're getting nearer to this terrain that we have a sick culture and we don't talk about. And if you go into this terrain here, you're going to get hit. So you might want to grow this way. Because the dumbest cultures don't like to admit that they're dumb, which is dumb, of course. And so they can't explain why they are irrational. Taboos are irrational. We don't talk about sex in this family. Nobody brings up Uncle Harry's drinking. Why? He just ruins every single Thanksgiving, and this one person, this one activity, brings 300% more trauma for the next month into every person's home, and that's the one thing that we should be talking about. And in this family, we are so intelligent, we say we're not going to talk about that? How dumb is that? You see, a child might look at that and it seems puzzling, so they keep digging a bit, and they start getting whacked until they say it's not safe to be a human being. I'm going to be a reptile. Fight, flight, freeze. It's not safe to tell the truth. I'm going to be a reptile. Fight, flight, freeze. It's not safe to care, because a child has strong mirror neurons and wants to interact with what's there. I mean, if Uncle Harry is unhappy, we want to know what's that about, what can we do, etc. But when that's what gets beaten down, it actually shatters the foundation of the human being, the one who cares enough to ask, to see, to respond, that wants to know, why is it this way and not this way? Well, you said we should talk whenever we have a question, so why are you, don't talk about that, don't talk back. You see, it blocks and it becomes unsafe. So the psychology still wants to grow, but they start shrinking into a more and more protective posture because they cannot see the pattern clearly enough to know where to redirect the growth. And in almost all cases in our culture, the adults are so clueless that they would not even understand the problem from the child's point of view. This is a nightmare for children. It was a nightmare for me. It is a nightmare for children. Now, I'm dealing with, various things of this nature all the time. And at a certain point when I start feeling like the entire planet is, for a whole host of bizarre reasons, this one's projecting on me, this one's doesn't want to be seen, this person is afraid of this, that, and the other. When a whole planet starts to pivot into attack for the part of me that cares enough to see. Going back to Dan, I see that he cannot be loved until he will show who he is to the women who want to love him, if they are capable of it, which many are not in the United States, which is sad. But if you understand how sad that is, and understand the reasons for it, and understand that it's impossible when you're lying, then you have a chance to love that scared little boy that is lying precisely because he didn't get love from telling the truth. There's a chance for that. And there's a care. You see, that perception cares for the women who get cheated on. It cares for the little boy. It cares for Dan's opportunity for growth. But he says he's going to come over to my house. He's killed people before, and I don't want him coming over to my house. And I call the high office, and Penny says, I'd stay out of that. And she's sitting right next to the person being cheated on. And I can't call this a safe community anymore. Because if that's how people at high handle abuse, violence, intimidation, cheating, and lying, and sexual betrayal, after working at high for 20 years, I can't learn anything there. Because I wouldn't do that to a friend. And someone working for high for 20 years can. And that's not Penny's problem. That's high's problem. Because high has a pattern of pushing out the people who speak up rather than bringing them into the center and protecting them. And that's sad for the future of high, and it's sad for the future of the community, because it hurts both equally. When you hurt the community by not developing effective scientific methods that heal these patterns, these diseases, these coping mechanisms, by dealing with the underlying trauma. In a healthy healing system, there is no garbage. A healthy healing system can take someone like Dan and teach him another way to be. That means that he gets loved even more, not less. And a healthy healing system can take someone like his partner and help them show up so that they get more love and not less. And that brings visibility to the community. Now that's a possibility. It's not a probability when as soon as anything gets brought up, it gets pushed outside. I feel sad for all involved. I feel pain. I feel deep hurt for all involved. And I feel scared for the part of me that cares about that in a community that turns him into the enemy. Edward Snowden had watched the way the United States military dealt with people that brought up violations of the law, violations of American human rights. So when he went public in a way that has never seen a single intelligence officer killed or anything, when he went public, he knew he would be fighting for his life, and he has been. He's in Russia, of all places. Because in an unhealthy culture, the people who bring information to light are viewed as the greatest threats. Now, I do not know of a single person in high that knows what to do to heal the dis-ease of dishonesty, bullying, and distrust, not only around Dan, but around Peter Sandhill, or the high facilitator body, Felicia Williams. I've grown sensitive to the fear of the adults around me. And yet at some point at 43 years old, when the vast majority of my potential or a community's potential or our country's potential is being squandered so that certain uncomfortable truths cannot be seen because someone feels embarrassed that they are seen. This is evil. It is too high a price for all of us to pay. If we have a little bit of character and understand just how many people do cheat, and so just the fact that it's proven that Dan does is not a prescription to evict 80% of the entire high community from itself, creating 80% waste because the organization has not figured how to heal lying in an effective way that honors the dignity and helps people understand it's for you too. We don't understand enough about love for people who cheat to understand that they're missing out on it. That they've just precluded the opportunity to be loved. And they won't have it until they're seen. And they can't be seen and lie. Lying equals deletion of love. Well, perhaps starting with the definition of love, which I've tried to explore in different portions of the site, we could move in a good direction there, starting with a definition. We don't even have a definition for sex in high. Is it a sacred energy exchange? Is it this? Is it that? We're not going to tell you. It's just make an unnecessary mystery so that we don't know what a word means. But we're language dependent in this culture. We drill the emphasis on language. So what happens basically is we naturally grow in all directions. And then at different points in the growth, some it's, curiosity, some it's love, some it's affection, some it's this. At different points in the age maturing process, some tendency that's just growing along nicely gets slammed, and it puts us into shock and dissociation. We try and understand why this time, and that gets slammed even harder. And we understand that it is not safe to think, feel, own, or talk about that. The only trouble is when you're dealing with a radial energy, you've got to bring in the entire focus, and you basically stop development of that type of phenomena at that age. And then you go on or on or on. Or maybe it stops for 2 or 3 years, and then you start hesitantly bursting through the barrier, and nobody's punishing you, and you're always waiting. I've waited most of my life to be killed because my body is waiting to be killed. And we start growing and we start growing. And then suddenly someone's aggressive, and we go right back to, it was 4 years old the last time someone did that. And we don't feel like an adult. I don't feel like an adult when I'm dealing with this. I feel like a 4-year-old. Oh my God, he could kill me, And yes, Dan could take a gun and if I disappear, you'll have an idea. But it's unlikely. It's unlikely that, if the hulking intensity didn't work out and all that, it's unlikely that he'd take the next step to actually kill me. That's not a good reason to stop all exploration or advocacy for honesty, etc., because I don't want to be killed. But when that's happened to a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 12-year-old, it's very easy to go back to that age and feel like if I don't do this, I could die. And I have no resources because that's how the 3-year-old and the 6-year-old felt. And so this is the mechanism. Now, if we can imagine that at different rings, different parts of us have been frozen in trauma, and they just don't go beyond that age. We now relate to those areas of ourselves as that age, which means all the fears and vulnerabilities of that age. Now, what I want to talk about is the physics of the equation. So you're a little light at 4 years old, and there's no backlash, right? So you're going along. And then you start walking, and then suddenly you are met with a wall of fear, hate, rage, etc. So you've got 3 adults that basically are in a panic. A 6-year-old child can't deal with 3 adults in a panic. They can't deal with 1 adult in a panic. Now, if all those 3 adults in fear, in anger, in hate, in convincing and cajoling are all lobbying little Jenny, like, don't talk about this, it'll be the end of it. And she just gets the message. She measures the volume of energy and emotion of those 3 adults, and it's about 18 times bigger than hers. Now, her impulse that's healthy is, look in this area. This needs to be looked at. Why is Daddy putting his penis here? Why, what's this? So she's looking, but she's got 3 adults. Her aunt is afraid of getting fired. The mother is afraid that she's going to be teased. Then the parents of her friends are going to do. And then her father is afraid of going to jail. So you got 3 adults there. And it's a sick society where no preparation is made for little Jenny. So little Jenny gets 3 intense adults all on the same side against her being real, against her having feelings, against her being true, and against her growing. Very intelligently, 6 years old, she concludes she could die if she goes as her 1 energy against, 18 units of energy. The amplitude is higher for the adults. Their intensity is... She's just curious. She's just open. But they're in a panic. Don't do it. Don't. You can never talk about this again. And she gets it. I'm going to die if I talk about this again. Well, before she can discover the issue in therapy, if she has a good therapist, she has got to accumulate the reserves of the equivalent of 18 units or 1,800% more energy than that 6-year-old to be at that 6-year-old's back. Some new age floozy with a forgive everyone and whatever, and I don't know, it doesn't matter what it is, just forgive everyone, isn't going to help that 6-year-old. This is just cowardice, basically. What's going to help her is if she's got 3 armed guards. Now, if 3 armed guards in meditation show up, and there's a therapist that understands what they're talking about, and you've learned a few things in life, and you've got 30 units of energy that you can make available and go back to that arena and say, no, I get that you at 6 years old had to face this alone. And that's a shame. That's a shame on this government. That's a shame on this culture. That's a shame on your parents. That's a shame on the neighbors. That's a shame on the people who did this to you. That is their shame. It is not yours. Get out of here. And you go with that. And you provide her with 20 or 30 units of energy. And you say, your curiosity is healthy, it's good, and I'm going to get you the fuck out of here. Now you ask whatever you want to ask. You communicate whatever you want to communicate. You've got our back. And these assholes, they are not going to interfere. Let's just move them out of the way. Get them out of the way. Now you continue growing, little Jenny. And let's see where that takes you. Let's see what you learn and understand about this. We've got you covered. This is not your fault, and it's not on you. Now, when that occurs, and she gets it, that's the moment when the regression keeps growing again. Until that moment, where she feels safer growing and being honest than she does regressing and protecting her abuser, until that moment, she's going to lie, discount, and internalize the abuse by pretending it didn't happen. And this is going to make the abuser very, very happy. I know everyone meant the best. No, it never happened, and it is never going to happen again, despite the fact that we still don't train parents on how to be parents. And there's just as many abusive parents as there were a generation ago. But it's never going to happen again, right? See, she can't deal with this bullshit. And she shouldn't have to. When she's got the reserve, she'll start growing again. Now, that's the problem of our culture right now. Where are those 30 units of energies? Where are those therapists that understand their role in restoring health to a dysfunctional culture? Where is the government program that's leading parenting to a higher level of excellence? Where are the community members that will help confront rather than run away so that we don't deal with this? When we have that answer, we have a growing and healthy culture that honors the feminine inside men and inside women. When the feminine is honored in men, they will honor it in their wives. No, it doesn't actually happen that a completely shame-based, dishonored, bullied man who feels like a shit in his feminine self treats his wife any better. It just doesn't happen. Why should it? Why should the man be so valueless that the women and men in his life as he grows up treats his feminine like shit? Why shouldn't his feminine be treated as magnificently, as tenderly, as beautifully as the feminine in his partner? Because they will be symmetrically aligned. The more a mother treats her son's feminine like shit, the more the son will treat his wife like shit, unless an intelligent force of equal or greater magnitude intervenes. That's momentum for you. So, why isn't that being done? Why have I grown up feeling terrified in the elite of New Age culture? Why? And what does that say about the rest of the country who haven't had the good fortune to be in such a snooty superior class of spiritual people who are better than everyone else? What does that say? So this is a very uncomfortable reality that I'm slowly giving to my child. Slowly. You realize how many enemies are angry at that little boy for actually seeing this stuff. Well, can you understand why we're heading in such a dark direction as a culture and a country if the lights that come forward seem like the enemy to everyone around them and are systematically attacked in the name of all kinds of bullshit? A new paradigm, love, be more mature, i.e. be cynical and be an idiot. So this pattern has happened at any point, and the key to understanding regression is that there are abusers standing around the regressed age. There are abusers standing around the regressed age with a given quantity of emotional charge that is directed hostilely towards the abused age. When that child is met with an inner force through meditation, through therapy, through hypnosis, etc., of an equal or greater charge, an equal or greater charge. If that child is an incest survivor and 10 family members are terrified of that coming out, the emotion that has to be gathered to protect that child has to be equal or greater than those 10 family members as experienced for the child, or you are the enemy to the child. Because if you show up with a little water pistol and antagonize that amount of energy that's directed in hostility and the contract, you tell and you die. You show up with a little water pistol. Be positive, little Jenny. Be positive. I'll be here for you. You get hit with that wave. She's left alone again as you get knocked over in confusion and dissociate and pretend that the meditation is going on. You're not there with her. This is deep work. If you don't have something you're willing to die for, and you don't know what it is and you don't feel peaceful about that, it's unlikely you have the reserves to show up for an inner child. that's dealing with this level of insanity and shame in this cult of fucked up lies. So this is a key pivot point in this regression phenomena. And that's what I'm working on right now when I feel 3 years old and I'm about to die, when I feel 6 years old. And it's always when I tell the truth. It's always when I take a stand for something beautiful inside me, because that's what happens in a sick culture. My teacher didn't mind me playing the fool and giving up my education for 4 years. But boy, was he furious when I asked a direct question. This is the world we ask our children to be born into. If it is true, as I've been told dozens upon dozens of times from multiple sources, that I had it lucky, that I had one of the best childhoods, that my parents were so wonderful. If that's true, then just add about 300 to 400% to everything that's fucked up with my parents and all that, and know what everyone else is dealing with. And ask how they're supposed to do it when we have a high school education program that distracts them from their feelings and doesn't teach them a goddamn thing. How are they supposed to do it? Have some empathy for the teens in your life. They're being thrown under the bus to protect a culture that doesn't work for the comfort of cowards, and then asked to be grateful. They ought to give you a punch in the fucking face. But would you have the courage to see the pain that they're trying to let you see with that punch? Or do you want to be the victim? Be a little child and make them be the adult again? These are big questions for people who are willing to be an adult. I'm just learning. I've felt like a regressed child my entire life. It's kind of exciting to be an adult from time to time. This is disgusting. This culture raises regressed people, and it's not their fault. When are we going to challenge the cult that is producing terrible results? If you just look here and here and here, look in the taboo areas. It's a nightmare. Anyway, this is the terrain that I'm exploring around age regression today, and I hope it serves you in your transformation.